Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Grid Shift podcast. I'm your host, Alex Durante. Today, we're sitting down with a very unique guest, Heath VanEten. He is the founder of WyoComp, who's building really at the intersection of what I would consider advanced materials, sustainability, and next generation manufacturing, which, as all of you know in the audience, I have a large background in manufacturing. So that really excites me to talk to Heath today. We are sponsored, as always, by Profit Access AI. We help companies scale revenue, increase profits, and simplify AI to help your business. So before we kick it off, I just want to say hello to Heath. Heath, how are you doing today?
Hey, good morning, Alex. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. So one thing that stood out to me when we had our pre-podcast call was how you and your team are intentionally restructuring your business. And what you're doing is you're scaling a large operation, but really to build a lean, innovation driven company focused on what I would consider high impact technology. So as you already know from our conversation, we focus on this podcast on how businesses scale. We focus on operations, systems, being that you have quite an extensive background in manufacturing and energy. We're going to touch on that a little bit. But guys, if you're here on this episode and you're looking for growth, you're looking to optimize your business and rethink how you scale, you're definitely in the right place. So I want to talk first by talking about the strategic shift that you had taken. So you mentioned on the prep call that you made a decision a while back to keep it smaller, but focus on the bigger things. And so walk me through that decision and tell us just a little about what your company does actually.
Cool, and thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. WyoComp's premise is really founded on taking annually renewable feedstock generated from the agricultural industry. And I like that because we're working essentially with byproduct. That's the stalks. And and it's all carbon based, and we're converting it into industrial use products that all have a fundamental competitive advantage over fossil-based materials. That could be chemicals, polymers, polymer fillers, um, fiber for fiber products, paper and pulp products. The literally the imagination is a limitation here. So if it's carbon-based, we can compete with it, and we can draw from a rapidly renewable and annually renewable source that's always there. And we're kind of helping provide a secondary income in the ag industry anyway, because anybody following ag commodities, there's a lot of up and downs. There's a lot of it's a perfectly competitive market where grains are typically priced low. So ag producers are always looking for extra income, and we could provide that. So that's the space we're operating in. And going back to um, trying to do more with less, and the fundamental premise for that is in the past when I've done a couple institutional capital raises, I feel like a facility I was setting up and building always had to be big, and always overly anticipating rapid growth. And oftentimes things don't always work out that way. So, and then typically to raise more money, you got to give up more to do it, especially in the venture capital space, angel space, all of that kind of stuff. And so my approach this time was the human capital's there, totally know what we're doing. Let's raise less money, put in smaller, this critical key equipment that we need. Um, Therefore, raising less money, giving up less for the company in ownership stock and ownership shares, and letting the business therefore fund its own growth and drive its own growth, and meaning filling sales, holding on to retain earnings that way, and then using that to leverage growth and additional equipment purchases in the future. Because in the past, I thought, man, well, what if we're behind the growth curve, and let's just buy that extra line that extra equipment. And allocation of capital is so important. I used to read, you learn in textbooks and lectures and about building this big company, this facility, having this giant management crew. The traditional way of looking at things, equity investors would be like, "Who's your management team?" It's just like, "Oh, I got to have a CFO. I've got to have this VP for that, this VP for this." And the thing about it is that you're looking at incredible draws on capital drain in order to do that. And love people, love helping people, love to hire a big team of people, work with people, share the dream, grow together, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, a business has to operate. A business has to operate off of capital, and it really runs off of cash flow. So this time around, we're raising a lot less money. We're giving up a substantially a lot less share of the company, working with people, and it's just going to be a facility based around and operations based around filling orders on what we need now, and then growing more on a just-in-time basis, if you will. So that's what it's all about.
I love that. You're really actually taking what a lot of people say lean manufacturing and we're lean, but in the reality, most businesses I've been around that preach that lean and use it as a buzzword, they're not at all. They have so much, they're so top heavy. They have people that are in positions that aren't actually contributing. And I liked what you said about you like working with people, but I want
Yeah,
to add on to that. You want to work with the right people. Not everybody is going to be an entrepreneur mindset that's in your business, right? And you can become
yeah,
so top heavy just hiring titles and positions. And I'd seen that so many times. And
yeah,
that's one of the things that I really took a lot of pride on was how can we become more lean? Because ultimately that impacts your entire team where you can give them more. But then on the other side, it impacts your customer. You can drive better prices. You can do things that companies that have that overhead cannot. I want to ask, when you made that decision, what kind of broke the old model in your mind, and what does, you just explained what doing bigger is, but what really broke that model for you? What made you look at things differently? Because a lot of people are still stuck in that traditional paradigm of having a big team and a lot of overhead and extra machines and all that kind of stuff. So what changed it for you?
it's always really been being a driven person, um, and highly motivated, and being a doer and not a sayer. And I know that sounds generic. I mean,
Yeah.
totally generic, but just working with when I started really young in management, and I had so much drive, but always being very, very aware of my surroundings and analytical, and just seeing like what could be done differently, and just seeing like how much there's like a grossly high amount of underperformance out there. And then as I was able to grow into more of an entrepreneurial role, and having my own businesses, controlling and running my own businesses, kind of doing what I said before, is like going out and over hiring just to secure capital to have a business. But then honestly, going back to what was it called? Like the Great Recession time around 08, 09.
Hmm.
That was a
Yep.
good pivotal time when you're asking for examples, where it forced us to let go, get a lot leaner. It forced us to
Yeah.
let go a lot of people, and both day-to-day factory workers, production techs, and management. But you know what? The business still went on, and you 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 and your team realize hands-on that we can still do this with a lot less people, and in almost you become more efficient than and then another perfect example is around the COVID times too. Just being able, and that even further grew, my position on that is like we're overly dependent on people doing too little, and not providing that return on investment out there. And again, I'm not, I don't want this podcast to be about beating up on people, because I think people are 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 pivotal. They're the most important thing at the end of the day. I mean, hey man, us as a human race, we all have to do something out there, and we all have to be important, feel valued, contribute. I mean, I just feel that's an integral part of the human race and all that kind of stuff. But when we're talking on the business side of things here, man, you gotta, you all the parts have to work right, and it's like a well-tuned machine where, if your some parts aren't performing or are underperforming, it's making the rest of the machine not operate, at an optimum. And when you're in business, you kind of have to have that mindset of how can I make it better? What parts are underperforming, and those are some examples of like how my mind started like thinking, how can I get more lean and like make a business run more streamlined and honestly the most profitable possible.
Right. No, and I don't think you're knocking on people at all. I think it's something that has to be talked about because we are having a shift in, I mean, we're having a shift in generations where the workforce is shifting. You're seeing that. And
Big time.
I tell people all the time, an owner of a company, a corporate company, they can always have your back, but you have to have your front. If you're not willing to put in the work and actually prove the ROI and the value that you bring, then everyone's replaceable all the way up to the C-suite executives, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think it's a knock on people. I think it's actually eye-opening for people to hear that because the reality is there's a ton of really good businesses out there that need really good help. But if you're just going to get a paycheck every day and you're not living with passion or purpose and you're not looking to contribute to something bigger than
Yeah.
your own pocket, I think you're right. And I think especially the younger generations, they need to hear that and they need to understand that
Yeah.
companies, again, companies can have your back, but you have to have your front. What are you doing to show up and be the best version of you every day? So I don't take it like that at all. I think that's very insightful. I want to talk about innovation a little bit. How are you thinking about innovation as a driver? As a driver and technology as a driver versus just worrying about scaling and growing, right? We talked a lot about innovation and technology on the pre-podcast, but I want to know how has that really driven a lot of your thinking? Again, innovation and technology.
I that for me as a person, and this I haven't really changed a lot on over 20 plus years in business and running businesses and starting businesses. I've always looked at things on a holistic level, and you kind of hit on things of like there's been these changes and shifts and like business and the way staff are looked at and all that. But I've kind of looked at things on a holistic basis because I feel like at the end of the day, and I'm not trying to get too green on you or whoever your audience may be, but at the end of the day, we live on a planet. We have water, we have an ecosystem, and I mean, industry and people and society should only harvest so many forests out of place because they have a place holistically too. They affect weather patterns and our oxygen levels and all of this stuff. And this is all scientific data on a scientific premise I'm speaking on. So with that said, on an innovative side and being driven, my like driver is like how can we displace like over dependence on unsustainable practices or um drilling up too much stuff out of the ground and that can emit too much carbon dioxide and like what are ways, because like you're looking at a whole environment there ripe for innovative practices and companies or technologies to penetrate that can capitalize on a whole like economic ecosystem ready and on the market side, there's a market, consumers and the markets want that. Naturally, you're going to face resistance trying to like displace fossil base and other producers. But a lot of them are even catching on and have reached out to WyoComp looking for technology solutions and things to add bio content and to become greener. So my answer to that is like I am looking for ways that like are driven based on like ways to improve the environment and like have a place to make the world we live in a better place. And that may sound generic and cheesy, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what WyoComp, what I've been about for 25 plus years. That's what gets me going when I wake up, when I have meetings set up and people are asking for technology solutions, asking for ways to make technologies better. Man, it's all about using this like renewable carbon in ways to displace unrenewable or less renewable carbon and emit less carbon dioxide, use less water, uh, you know, just conserving natural resources the best way possible because, like I said, at the end of the day, we're humans living on a planet. We need to eat and breathe. I mean,
Mhm.
I want to have good food, healthy food, clean water, right? And a healthy environment for me, my kids, and future generations to be able to have.
Right. Absolutely. And what you just hit on is the word that came to mind is evolution, right? As humans, we have to be evolving constantly. And the truth is, I think this is part of a larger evolution pattern in humans, right?
We
We're
are, yeah,
finding out that
absolutely. Yeah.
there's better ways to produce energy. There are things that impact our planet that a lot of people want to argue and make political. But if you really just boil it
Mhm.
down to what it is, this is part of growth. This is part of evolving as a human race and not just,
Yeah.
in the United States, but globally. I mean, there's
Yeah.
other countries that are doing things that are way, way, way ahead of us. I mean, I had a podcast the other day with someone who does a lot of stuff in China, and she was telling me that the innovation and the stuff that they're doing there, they're 10 or 15 years ahead of us. And that to me, I take a lot of pride in our country and what we do. We need to be competitive with that type of stuff. So I want to
Yeah.
ask, and without giving some of these big company names that we talked about that are working with you and asking
Yeah.
about what you guys do, and there's clearly a demand for what you do. But what I want to understand is what is it that WyoComp does differently that's creating that level of inbound demand, really, like people reaching out and asking, hey, how can you help me? What's making you guys different compared to other companies?
Really our foundation in the renewables. And what really separates us is that and then having the technology know how to implement it. Yeah, I read from time to time in a science digest or a online publication where there's like a newer company that came about maybe 10 or 15 years ago, but they just simply aren't around 10 years later. And so it's really about having it costs a lot of money to go to enter a space and to innovate and establish yourself. I mean, it is almost cost prohibitive. I mean, it is so hard to do it. Some big companies out there, I don't really want to name them, but some of the biggest companies have went out and maybe acquired somebody, but that technology is absorbed, compartmentalized, but it's almost done in a way to like make it go away or something. I'm serious. And or their staff get overstaffed. A CEO says, "What are we doing with this? Let's cut it," and then it goes away in that way. It becomes not relevant. So we've been really pushing the renewables. My biggest competitors when it comes to natural fibers are people in the forestry industry and that use trees as a foundation for fiber. But I mean, the case is simple and easy to argue that agricultural fibers way more rapidly renewable. It's annually generated. It's a byproduct from generating food. Um, yeah, we need to do forest practices, forest thinning and all that, but you're looking at 10, 20 years for a tree to generate. And there's still practices of clear cutting out there, which is devastating. Think about it from an ecological standpoint, impacts to wildlife, natural ecosystems, everything from little worms and bugs to birds. And it's just brutal, man. I mean, it really is.
Right.
And I'm not trying to get too crazy environmentalist on you, but I'm just talking from a scientific perspective here. And then from a from a like feedstock standpoint of view, statistically, around 300 million or so ton annually available on the forestry side, whereas there's like over 600 million ton annually renewable on a from the agricultural sector side from biomass feedstocks. So you're looking at um two-third two-thirds available out of the one-third available from a environmental standpoint. Just from a statistical standpoint, I mean, there's a lot more available from the industry, and we do zero environmental impact because people are already growing wheat for the food. Their farming practices are really good with no-till and things like that, or minimum till, so they're not overworking the ground. So there's dust bowls. That practice has been gravitated away from big time, even though there's still some. But so about every way you can look at it, like what's standing us apart is just being more aware and like implementing um plans and strategies that capitalize on what is the best thing to use or the best resource to use, how to use it, and to displace materials and chemicals and other things that are way less renewable and not available. And it's kind of a really an easy market strategy if you think about it. But like I said, competitively, it's a real competitive marketplace in industry and business. Because if you're going to go out and grab some of that market share, you're going to take it from somebody, and that company, those people don't want to lose that market share. And that's the way it is in capital markets, the raw material markets, um, but in a free enterprise system and in economies, that's just the way it works, man. I mean,
Right.
yeah, and we are truly a free market economy here versus like the example you gave in China where they can be dictated a little bit more on technology development and direction. Our economy is dependent on me, you, and others like generating those ideas, finding the capital to implement it, competing for that capital.
Right.
So we have these barriers that are always competing against us out there, and it's good and it's bad. It arguably could be more efficient, but can it get us behind? Maybe, probably. It could be, yeah. We're ahead in a lot of areas though in technology. But we depend on the market to drive that though here. And to wrap that up, what I found though is the market wants what we offer. And it's just a matter of us getting into that space and being able to supply it because I will tell you this hands down, demand for what we offer far exceeds what we can supply right now.
Mm. That's well, I want to talk about this a little bit of the specifics of that because what I found really interesting is how you guys are converting agricultural fibers into things like biochemicals and even carbon alternatives for batteries and things of that
Yeah,
nature. Now, I
that's
don't
right.
know nearly as much, but I want to talk about from your perspective, how big do you think that shift coming in material science is over the next few years? And I guess before we get to that question, explain a little bit about what you guys are doing converting those agricultural fibers into things like biochemicals? Because I find that to be really interesting. And especially for my audience and owners of manufacturing companies that are watching this, what is it that you guys are doing with that agriculture fiber? Like, how does this all work?
It's a process of, and I've worked with a couple universities on those technologies, and and it's really just I'm not trying to oversimplify things here, but it's
Please
all
do.
going
Please
back,
do.
and it's all going back to working with carbon-based material. And it's just like what we're doing though is we're finding carbon-based material that's just available, more easily accessible, more market ready versus going out and doing destructive mining for something. We're our approach is like let's go out to a market system that's already generating it, and it's there. And like when on chemicals, it's all about refining processes, using traditional refining processes that would break down and separate different type of molecules in crude oil even, and separating them where you separate it and refine it into like naphthalene, piexylene, indene, all these chemicals that can be refined and separated out using the same processes essentially that the fossil based people are using. There's a little bit of a modification and a difference of what we do, but not significant. And I'll be honest, we don't own a refinery. We just have the technologies to do it, and it's part of our technology portfolio. And I have chemical distributors down in Texas, Houston, that are saying, "Hey, if you make it, we'll sell as much as you'll make it." But once again, Alex, it's this whole um, process of going back out to capital markets to build a network of these refineries and wanting to deal with the institutional investor or big, large level institutional bankers, and that whole process of doing that again of like, yeah, um, we can put together $100 million, fund for this. Yeah, we'd love to, but um, how about 5% of your company you will let you retain? It's just like, and that makes me just say no thanks. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm making a good living doing it. Loving life. So my thought process on all of that would be eventually is just to bundle certain technologies, find the right purchaser for them, and just let them take that technology and scale it up. Because in business, everything's about scalability because it's really hard to operate being this big, especially if you're in an industry that's commodity based, because all those chemicals are all commodity based though. So anybody that knows anything about business and economics is you have to have certain scale in order just to be able to operate on some of the technologies, for instance, like my biocomposites, nanocomposite materials, and polymer fillers. We're highly differentiated enough to where we can operate in a smaller space, provide a premium product that provides like physical property benefits, sustainability benefits, and even price and cost decreases or lower their costs and still be robustly profitable though. So there's some areas where we can do what we do and do it well and be smaller. And then like um the biocarbon technologies for lithium ion batteries, I mean, anybody that knows anything about this space, the growth potential is like staggering. And again, it's just really finding the right company, the team, the technologies with that can run with it. Because WyoComp, me and the limited amount of network and staff I have, we just don't have that ability to do it unless we want to concentrate on that alone. And then once again, go out and do like a $500 million raise in order to implement all the pieces necessary to like bring those technologies to market and then compete with the people that are in market because they don't want us taken their piece of pie away. I mean, because we're once again, it's all rudimentary business stuff because we're in business and you have to be able to compete and compete for the capital to do it. You have to compete in the market space, take market away from others because the people that are in it have invested a lot of money and time and they don't want to give anything up because they're doing really well in that space, the battery
Right. I
and
mean,
energy
their job.
storage.
Right. And they want to protect, I mean, they want to protect their market share and protect their profit. One thing that you touched on a little bit ago was you mentioned that demand is actually exceeding your ability to deliver at times, especially with third-party manufacturing and things like that.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned having enough partners. So as you think about, building your next facility, what's the real constraint right now? Is it infrastructure? Is it, executive bandwidth? Like what's the constraint that makes the demand actually exceed? Like why isn't it able to be delivered as much? I'm just curious what that constraint is.
Well, there's a couple constraints in this. The
I
one
mean,
side,
clearly there's a knowledge gap. Like people don't I feel that a lot of people that I talk to, that people don't know what technology is available to them. They don't know
yeah.
what other alternatives are available. But, well, yeah, go ahead, continue. Sorry.
No, you're perfectly good. There's a couple areas of it. On one side, there's the capital markets side, whereas like banking are operating within certain metrics and restrictions right now. And think about it, interest rates are high, um, and they're taking a really ultra conservative position in lending practices. So their metrics are challenging because they want so much collateral. That's this they're putting on their banking hats and things like that. So if you got let's say a $20 million project, if your company has like a $4 million balance sheet, you know, they're saying, like where's the collateral? And then you got capital markets in the equity space where um this is better than me even, but the money's been being driven and going to AI data centers, that space where there's high growth and a lot of potential and money is just flowing. I mean, flooding in those areas and it's hard to attract capital in areas that are more traditional based, making tangible things. Even though there's a space for it, there's a demand for it, but so, and then in order to attract that capital and from those VCs, investors, they're asking for more than what I want to give. From my
Right.
company standpoint, because I don't want to give my company up. I don't want to ever give it up again. I'll tell you that much. I mean, like, I'll just keep doing. I'd rather keep doing what I'm doing, and being happy than over leveraging myself, and then being a minority position, and then just dealing with a big soap opera again, because that's what my history has been with working with investors, big boards, other investor groups. Is this, and like respect to them because they're driven by their own motivation, their own needs and wants, and it's hard to find every all of those variables to line up though. And But it's just like a good recipe for a big soap opera though when you do that. And just all of a sudden you find yourself allocating more time on dealing with board initiatives and board mandates and answering to people versus out there getting something done and growing a company,
Right.
enjoying yourself, making yourself happy and the market happy. And so I'd rather allocate my time more efficiently doing what I'm doing. And the way my position is that if the right if the right capital partners are there, let's do this. Let's all make let's all go out and make some money together, and let's make the market happy too. So then on the market side, though, man, there's I guess the only market constraint is like me not being able to supply it. Me, right? I mean, because I'm that's the biggest variable right now. I mean, because even with the volatility in markets right now, my access to polymers, the pricing, I'm still very profitable in all areas. And one cool thing about generating annually renewable natural fiber polymer fillers that are advanced fillers for the plastics industry is like we bring their costs down. So when plastics prices are high, we offer a solution to help reduce their costs and help them manage their costs or keep them more stable. So and like by adding bio content and making everybody feel all warm and fuzzy, feeling good because we're helping the planet by doing so.
Right. Well, and I think you've gone through raising capital both ways, right? You went through the first way with heavy overhead and then had the realization like there's no reason to run it like this. We can run it more
Yeah,
lean. And I think that's where your capital strategy is different because what you're doing is you're growing without the financial drag, right? And
yeah,
so you've kind of flipped that where a lot of people that are raising capital, they have heavy overhead, and that's a risk for an investor or a venture capitalist. But what you're doing is running it on such a lean basis, and clearly
yeah.
you have the demand. So if we're thinking forward and we're looking really from the operator's lens, looking ahead the next 12 to 18 months, what are the two or three signals that are really telling you, hey, we're right on track, or we need to pivot and adjust? What signals do you look for?
Oh boy. About any trajectory you can think of, I think that we'll be able to pivot and manage it or adjust. I really do because that's just when you're a smaller business, you can do that more easily than really large business. Large business can pivot and adjust, but it takes more time, and there's a big time lag, and there's a large cost to do it. So being a smaller enterprise with less staff, I mean, and the ability to make faster decisions, I think will be fine. Honestly, with the way technology's changing, I think we'll be positioned to be able to utilize it and be able to capitalize on that. The way people's demand for carbon-based material, which we all use it, we all need it. I mean, we use it in everything we have. I mean, it is. I'm from our phones, our computers, our automobiles. It's all based off of carbon. I mean,
Even down to a coffee cup.
it is, man. We're a bunch of walking carbon bodies here. I mean, I mean, like, seriously. I mean,
It's the truth.
I know. So I think we'll be okay. It's just so I don't see really, from any spectrum, whether political, administrative, any type of like financial position, whether it be Federal Reserve or based off of like Congress is like type of mandates tax. I mean, we'll be able to adjust fine. I feel like and we've already done it. And there's going to be challenges for anybody and everybody out there. Some people are going to have it better than others. It's just about adapting, yeah, and being ready for it. And like the way your question staged it, how are you going to be positioned for it? Is this trying to be able to anticipate and see what's coming is going to be important. I feel like fortunately for what WyoComp does and what we're doing, the landscape looks really, really good. Just based on the materials need, the market still needs what we can deliver. And
Right.
that's really, we got a great story. Our the way we can deliver our market vision and market strategy is really, really comes home to the consumer and the end user, and not just from a consumer standpoint, but from an industry standpoint too, because getting to go and present at a large conference for the plastics industry last fall, people love the message, and the industry is looking for what little WyoComp is doing and what we can deliver. And I'm telling you, we've got some of the biggest plastics and chemicals companies emailing and calling me. I mean, I have not had to make a house call for decades. Seriously, I have not had to go bang down doors, do emails, bugging people for sales. And that's a good thing, to be in that kind of position, where the market is literally hounding WyoComp for what we offer and what we can do for them. And then that's really cool. Gives me hope for the human race and for the marketplace.
Yeah, the clearly the demand is there, and that's nice that you're able to focus on the delivery and making sure that you're delivering a quality product and scaling with that demand. I like to end the podcast by asking a question to every person that I have on here, and it's my magic wand question. And so I ask this because I think it helps a lot of businesses sometimes get this tunnel vision where they don't look outside of, what's the one problem they're trying to solve. But I want to ask, if you had a magic wand and you could fix one thing in business right now, right? Something that's slowing you down or holding you back, what would that be?
Whoa.
The magic wand question.
I think the my magic wand question would be, just getting more free flowing and efficient capital markets, because I think there's a big misallocation of capital, and everybody's driven by their own needs, their own decision making. Um, whether you've been in that big driving up the value of Bitcoin over the years, and I mean, wow, I mean, I never saw that coming, and I know a lot of people in the upper 20s to upper 40s age group that rode that horse, man. But I mean, is that the area? I mean, is or are there other areas that are more sustainable? The capital markets, should they be driving other areas? And um like in the lending institutions, are they lending money and allocating capital in the wrong area? It seems to me like there's like too long the delays in placement of capital right now, and whether they're innate metric based constraints, or people having to do more time consuming due diligence. It just seems to me like from time of conception of ideas, market readiness of ideas, technology being ready for market, it seems to be taking too long for those things to get into the marketplace itself. And in some areas are doing great. And don't get me wrong, I follow all the major stock markets and indices. Some markets are money is just flowing, but is it possibly overflowing now? Could some of that capital be allocated to other areas that are important, arguably, for the environment, for all of us? And so that would be about my magic wand question would be related to the way the capital markets are working, because from everything else, because equipment, technologies, all that kind of stuff is there and rating, because I know some of the largest equipment people globally, and everybody is just kind of like waiting. Big companies are waiting. Some of it, and a lot of it is like capital based. I'm serious. Even like the really, 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 really big Fortune 500 companies, it's all revolves around capital, and what people are waiting to do. Am I going to buy those 10 lines? Am I going to buy that next plant? And there's some things that have been in, put in place based on administration driving, some growth in the United States, more factories and all that kind of stuff. But you, I think domestically we're looking at a small industrial revolution on the forefront again. And it's just, are the capital markets in place and ready to feed that? Because everything from policy and everything's in place. A lot of the global markets I work with, global competitors and people that hire me, they're all watching the US and like what we're going to do for trade. And like, And again, a lot of this is capital based on what people are waiting to make capital based decisions on, because like we have this big disruption right now in trade, global trade, people fighting for their market shares and countering trade and tariffs and all this stuff. And but what it's doing is just creating some uncertainty. But eventually, though, things will settle down. Everybody will be able to adapt. People that are going to lose market share are going to find a way to survive and give it up. The people that are positioned to gain it will be able to gain it. So I feel like we're in this big structural change, and it's just a matter of the capital markets being more available and ready to service it and to support it.
To move with the innovation. And I think you're right. I think we're going through
Yeah,
a major shift, hence the title of the podcast, the Grid Shift Podcast, right? Because it's
yeah,
not just the energy grid, but it's really overall, I think economy at scale is shifting, the way capital is being used is shifting, industry shifting. Well,
yeah,
yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on, Heath. I think this was a really sharp interview. I especially appreciate you digging into your business, what's worked for you, what's really made a difference. On the technology side, I would like to give an opportunity. What's the best way for people to connect with you, Heath, and also connect with WyoComp as a company?
WyoComp.com, WYOCOMP.com, or find me on LinkedIn, Heath VanEten at WyoComp on LinkedIn, would be the best ways. And we have a contact us page on the website that will get funneled to me. But those are definitely the best, easily accessible routes to reach me.
Awesome. And we will, as always, everyone, we will make sure to post a description underneath this podcast. We'll put Heath's LinkedIn page in there, the company website, and all that contact information. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. As always, we appreciate every one of our viewers. And again, make sure you connect with Heath and WyoComp. They're doing some really cool stuff over there. And who knows how they could help your business. It's just a connection away from maybe saving some of those revenues, saving some of those overhead costs, increasing your profits, and things of that nature. So make sure you connect with our guest. And again, Heath, I really appreciate you coming on, and we will see you next episode of the Grid Shift Podcast. Thank you, everybody.